balancing work and motherhood isn't just difficult. It highlights a systemic imbalance for working parents, especially moms. The school day ends at 3, but work commitments stretch well beyond 5, and that's just one example. In an industry that's male-dominated, being a woman in tech already comes with its own set of challenges, but motherhood introduces a whole set of complexities on top of that, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm thrilled to have Zeba Khan with me today as we dive into some controversial topics surrounding motherhood in tech, and I can't wait to hear her insights. Hi, Zeba.
Hi, Reem.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. Could you start by telling us about yourself and your background?
So happy to be here. I have about 16 years of experience in the tech industry. I myself started as a developer, have changed and switched to many different roles as the technology has evolved around us and as my life has also changed and I've grown. I am at a consulting firm now where I'm at a direct level position where obviously the responsibilities are more. And with that, I'm also a mother of a 4-year-old daughter. She's amazing. She's great and really my pride and joy. And I'm so happy to be here to just talk through everything motherhood related and what we do at work.
As you know, there are several controversial topics surrounding moms in tech that touch on workplace culture, expectations, systemic issues within the industry. And I'd love to talk to you about a few of them and get your insights about your personal experience when it comes to these controversial topics. So the first one I want to start with is the motherhood penalty controversy. And that's actually a coined term that I came across as I was preparing for this interview. It refers to the systemic disadvantages that mothers face in the workplace, and this can include being passed over for promotions, pay disparities, or assumptions about their commitments due to their motherhood responsibilities. So my question to you is, have you ever experienced the motherhood penalty in your career where being a mom affected your chances of promotion or salary growth? And how did you handle such a situation?
I have two ways to think about it. So one is, I think, the organizational penalty, which is essentially what really comes from your place of work and how they react to now your new role and your responsibilities. And I feel like the other aspect of this is really our own mindset and how that sort of plays a part as well. So I'm going to touch on both. So one from the organizational side, I think when I returned back from work and it was right after the 4-month maternity, which is you're really like you've gone through so much in those 4 months and have really grown and changed really physically and emotionally. So coming back, there've been comments like we don't see the same level of, let's say, enthusiasm, or we don't see the same level of being present at work. It felt like that a lot of that was done potentially in good spirit. Mm-hmm. But it just hit me because I felt as if it was, a comment on my performance. And this is where the mindset comes. And I do wanted to talk about that too, because when we give birth, there's just so many changes that have happened in ourselves. And it's just potentially the face just remains the same, but everything inside has changed. It's just upside down. Our brain literally goes through a physical transformation where now it's more tuned to listening to others' needs. And it is really nature's way of protecting the child, right? And what ends up happening is that you are now in that same sense and like same being, you are now coming to work and now you are getting affected by all of these comments and feedback. And you personally are thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not really good at it anymore. Mm-hmm. And really questioning yourself. So I think it comes from both angles. And I think what's really important to understand in this space is how, as an organization, as leaders, we're really supporting this change in a human being mm-hmm. that is beyond than just a child coming out of their body. It's just their body transformation and how everything shifts with that.
What advice would you give women who feel that they're being judged also or sidelined because of their parental status?
What I would suggest doing is really believing in yourself, there is a reason why you are at the job that you're at. There's a reason why you've been successful so far. So I think really going back to believing in yourself and cutting out the noise, which is not easy. I've had many peers and friends, and I've seen them go through their journey. It's everyone's own journey to take. But I think just going back to, yes, I did this and I can still do it. And that could come with habits like journaling or self-talk, talking to a friend and talking to peers who are mothers in their early years, I think has helped me. And as you get to that level, I think you should potentially explore that to really get back that confidence in yourself.
I'm curious, is that a conversation you ever had with your manager or peers? And is that a conversation that you encourage people to have too?
That's a really good question because I never had an example. And it is so mind-boggling, which is the other portion of how we don't see as many women in leadership, especially mothers, right? In these early years, I did not have an example to look up to. I had nobody to talk to. At least in my, I wouldn't call it all of my organization, but at least in my practice, in the space I'm in the core technology area, while everybody was supportive, and my manager was supportive, and my practice lead was very supportive, checking on me, etc. But nobody has undergone personally this journey where they know that this is going to change. This is going to happen. So what I started doing was when I went through this and then I had some of those friends and peers who were going through this journey, I started reaching out to them and checking on them and just telling them that you may feel this way, but that's not right. You may feel that you're judged. You may feel that you're not competent enough or something has changed and you're just obviously taking care of a little baby and here doing everything at once. But how to really incorporate some of those habits and really take that journey at your own pace and get to a point where you start believing in yourself and you're back on your 2 feet. So this is interesting that when I had to go through it, I was able to then share it back with others as well.
The responsibility shouldn't just be on the new mom. These judgments shouldn't happen in the first place, and there should be empathy and compassion and just understanding of what moms go through, especially new moms.
100%.
So on to the next controversial topic, which is the lack of flexible work policies. And while many companies in tech have moved toward remote and flexible work arrangements, I feel like many working moms still find that taking advantage of these flexibility can lead to them being viewed as less dedicated or less ambitious compared to their peers. I know you work for Ernst & Young now, so how has Ernst & Young adapted to the need of flexible work policies, especially for working moms, and especially I know that there are travel demands on you as well. Have you faced resistance or challenges when requesting flexibility?
That's a great question, and especially in consulting, it's harder. So one advantage I've had, it's just been working with EY for a longer time and I've had that relationship. So like I was saying, from my practice lead, from my manager, I think there was always this support of we will help you where you need help, meaning my biggest concern was travel. It was tough initially and not being able to do the regular Monday through Thursday schedule and how we could potentially work around that and find either more remote projects or local projects. So I did get the support, I think, in that aspect in what I wanted to do. Even there was a point where I was debating again that should I be in consulting only because of the demands. And if I don't meet them, like I quickly disqualified myself of being in this position. And then that's where I had a conversation and they were supportive. And then now I have things like, okay, I do have to drop her off at daycare. I do have to pick her up. And once I pick her up, I do want to spend those couple of hours with her because I don't get to see her all day. So one, I did get the support from them, but then I have also set some clear boundaries on when I need time. And I think I was able to do that because I had the support. So I think it's a two-way street. To your point earlier, as an organization, as a leader, we need to be supportive to the needs of new moms and new parents in general. I think it applies to both parents, and then set our own boundaries. That means that sometimes you may miss out on, opportunities, or maybe there was like a cool project happening in Japan for like 4 weeks, and obviously I can't take that. Not that it happened, but just as an example, I think sure those things will happen, but it's about what your priorities are, and as long as organizations support it, I think as in parents we prioritize what we want. That would be the ideal world.
Yep. Kudos for speaking up and asking for support. One very important lesson I learned is when you don't ask, the answer is always no. So it's really great to feel empowered to speak up and ask. And most of the time, managers and organizations are really supportive. Sometimes we limit ourselves. We tell ourselves that it's not going to happen. They're not going to be supportive. They're going to look at it as a bad thing. But again, the answer is always no if we don't ask. So I'm glad you did. And I'm glad that they also extended support and accommodations and flexibility that you needed. So do you think that the tech industry overall is doing enough to create these meaningful, flexible work environments for parents in general and moms specifically, or are we still a long way from doing that?
I have my own thinking and theory on this. I know initially when we just started this conversation, you had mentioned the mismatch between school hours and the work hours and the whole schedule around 9 to 5. In my mind, in an ideal world, the flexibility would be at its best level is when, as organizations, we are able to give parents the ability to really work with that schedule, be it aligning school to orgs or orgs to school. How beautiful would it be for both of the parents as well as children to go back together, spend like really good evening together, have a constructive work day, and then have a healthier life both physically and mentally. What I see is with all the stress that is being induced through competition, through being ambitious, through these, like you have to climb up the ladder and get to a certain position, you have so much stress in a household that the children feel it. And when the children feel it, it's the next generation that feels it. And think about this next generation that's just being developed in this anxious world with this anxiety, with this stress. When then they grow up, you have employees who are constantly anxious and stressed out, which is not healthy for anybody. So to me, I mean, if I could really change something, it would be to really give our employees and the people who work there that flexibility to be present, to be stress-free with their children, with their families, and live more fulfilling life than just it being on paper with all the benefits that you get, but you don't really get time to use.
Okay, so moving on to the third controversial topic, which is that tech has an always-on culture. And there's a pressure to be constantly connected, to respond to emails at all hours, always be available online. And that, I'm sure, creates tension for working moms. So have you struggled with this expectation? And how do you create boundaries between work and personal life as a mom?
So initially, when I went back to work, I used to own this Apple Watch, and then I'll have my phone. And I said, oh, I should have a watch that I could get a Teams ping here when somebody's pinging me, and, very, very well connected. But then I realized that at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. or whatever, like there's this ping's coming and I'm either changing a diaper or I'm getting the dinner ready, and then I'm constantly looking and I'm stressed about, okay, I can't respond now because I need to finish. I can't just leave the diaper there. I need to finish that. But by that time, somebody else has responded, and then I'm feeling, oh my goodness, now they'll feel I'm not there, right? I went through a lot of that, and it took me a while to realize that it's okay to not respond. And it wasn't like a quick light bulb and I just shut it off. After my maternity leave, I went through therapy, I went through coaching sessions. I've gone through a lot of that to come to this realization that yes, you can just turn it off and it is okay. The world's not going to collapse. And even if you miss out on opportunities, which I have, you will get more opportunities as long as you're open to it. So what I do these days is basically I have my phone that automatically goes to in this personal mode where I do not get things for anything on my phone except for emergency contacts. I don't get any ping. I don't get any Outlook. I got rid of my Apple Watch. I don't need to be connected that much. And that's how I'm trying to create those boundaries beyond the typical 9 to 5, where if I know that, yes, there is an urgent deadline, there is an urgent proposal, I will sure log back in. It took a while, but that's how I've tried to sort of constrain my mental space and not get distracted by everything.
I'm glad you mentioned therapy because it's not easy to disconnect. You're glued to your phone, you keep refreshing, you keep checking your email. It's a combination of addiction and FOMO, but I think that's where it's important to set these boundaries, not just for you, but for your team as well. If you as a leader don't respond to messages after working hours, then you're setting the tone for everyone in your team and your organization that it's okay to wait. But unfortunately, when we entertain those constant need to be connected, then we're encouraging such culture. So this is a great segue to talk about mental health, which is becoming a growing concern for many people and working moms, and particularly in fast-paced industries like technology. How do you prioritize your well-being, and what advice would you give to moms who are struggling with burnout?
Mental health is something that we should all address, but particularly mothers. As we talked about the shift in the brain earlier, obviously there's a hormonal change that happens. We've talked about depression that happens right after giving birth, and every person is going through their own journey at that time, physically and mentally. And it's hard. When I came back, I was questioning myself on everything I did. I thought consulting is not for me. You are trying to find your identity now as a mother. And then in all of that, you are still trying to establish yourself at work and even potentially trying to get to promoted to next level. When I came in, that was my promotion year. So I was also getting ready for the next level. And I said, no, there's no way I can do it. Thanks to a great UI policy, they have these free therapy sessions that you can take every year. And I thought I will try it and see how it goes because I've never done therapy before and I don't know if I need it. I think it was, a series over 4 to 6 months where I went through these sessions, the exercises, and trying to really build myself from ground up, which was so helpful at that moment in my life because I was able to at least stop questioning myself that much and build a little bit of more confidence, but then also be a bit more available and mentally there for my family, for my child at that time. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend. Even if you don't believe in therapy, it's just a way to talk to somebody and it can't be that bad, right? So I think that's one. And just having a bit of personal time, just carving out time for yourself is important. I do take the time to go out on a morning walk when we can in Chicago, do workouts or whatever interests you. I think as moms, especially, we try to give our 200% to the child and to everyone else. But what we forget is really finding that time for ourselves.
The fourth controversial topic I want to talk about is maternity leave. And I know policies in tech vary widely around maternity leave. Some companies offer generous benefits, others fall behind. But even in companies with great policies, I feel like many women face negative impacts on their career trajectory after taking a leave. There's that persistent perception that taking a maternity leave can derail your career, you'll miss out on opportunities, you lose seniority, or you might struggle just reintegrating back into the workforce. What was your experience like with maternity leave? And did you notice any career setbacks or biases when you returned to work?
There's an interesting story there. I was at that time working with a client and I was just telling them that I'll be away. And they said, how's the maternity leave? I said, it's 16 weeks, about 4 months. And this was a man. So he's like, oh, that's great because, you get 4 months off and you have another baby and you get 4 months off and you get to go on vacation. And I didn't know how to react to that, to be completely honest, because one, I hadn't gone through childbirth or didn't understand that. I said, yeah, maybe that is nice. We'll see. And I still remember that conversation so clearly because everything that I went through after that, and I realized, no, it's not a vacation. This is the time where you're actually probably doing more work than you were before. And it's a really important time in your life, not just for you personally, but if you take a step back for human race, right? I think you're creating these new individuals coming into the world. So I think if you look at maternity leave, that bias that's like, oh, you're just going to take a lot of time off and it's just going to be a nice time, that perception has to change. Everyone needs to understand what it really entails, and it's not vacation. And I think, yes, there could be repercussions because what I felt was with this break, you tend to lose out on, let's say, some of the continued projects you were working on, maybe some sales pursuits that were ongoing. So now when you come back, you have to start from scratch. You have to start building yourself from scratch, but you also have to start connecting again back to some of the work. And it is a reset, but I think sometimes also what happens is once you come back, there is this perception of, oh, you might be not as present, not as available. So let's give you some easier projects. But then that is also then fueling your already conscious mind of, I think I'm not good at this. And they're giving me easy projects now. So they definitely think I'm not good at this. And having an open conversation helps, right? I understand you've gone through a lot. Now you're back from maternity leave. Let's talk through a plan on where you feel comfortable in taking up these tasks because we know you can, right? If somebody had it with me, would have been brilliant because then I get to really be present and there instead of being handed over some of the things that, okay, maybe you just came back, you just need to do this. Don't decide for me, I think is what I'm trying to say, right? So I think organizations can help there as well as leadership to really support that journey, but respect the person coming back because they do have all the skills and everything that you hired them for.
Yep. Okay, the next controversial topic is women in leadership roles or lack thereof. I was surprised when I looked up the percentage of women in tech with a VP of engineering title, and it was 7%. I think it was around 8% for women CTOs. So despite the tech industry being focused on innovation, leadership roles still remain dominated by men, especially at the executive level. And I think mothers in particular face more hurdles breaking through the glass ceiling due to these biases that we talked about around their availability and their commitment. So as a woman leader in tech yourself, what barriers did you face in climbing the ladder? And do you think motherhood played a role in any of those challenges?
Yes, there are always challenges and biases that you'd see. I mean, simple examples are when we're in a meeting, let's say with a client or somebody who's external and doesn't know and cannot see the titles, right? They would automatically ask that question to the male. Usually when it's tech, they'll direct the question to that person asking for any complex technical topic. There is defaults like when leading a larger project that has happened recently is, oh, we want this male senior manager / director to be on. And they won't obviously say a reason, but they just say, all right, you should be on it. I feel like I have seen and sensed that throughout my career. I've just become so comfortable in the uncomfortable. I'll be the only female in the room, and that's fine. And I might be different, I might be colored, and that's fine. There's so many of these nuances that I do notice, but I just tell myself I'm fine. The flip side of this is it takes up a lot of energy, meaning you have to work harder. You have to prove more times that you can do it, right? You have to repeat it a lot more times for people to believe it. One of my counselees that I had at EY, his wife reached the C-suite level. And he was once commenting and telling me that I truly understand how hard you have to work, because she works a lot harder than me to get to potentially the similar position that I've had.
Wow.
I never had to. And I was like, oh, thank goodness somebody knows and understands this. So the point I'm trying to get to is, I think organizations have to realize it. We keep building this culture of push and pull, and you have to grind, you have to be the loudest person, you have to be the strongest person. If you keep continuing to build that type of culture, then it's hard for people who are softer and kinder and calmer. And we need those people in the industry as well, right? So I think organizations have a huge role to play in that, so that women don't feel exhausted to be working twice as hard to get to the same levels.
Yeah, this was great. I want to say that there's a misconception that women want free passes, that we want organizations or companies to help us get to leadership roles. But I want to stress out what you said. We just don't want to work twice as hard. We want to work as hard as men. We don't want to spend double the amount of effort and time to prove ourselves when our work speaks for ourselves. I had this conversation with so many men, and a lot of people talk about diversity hires, whether it's in executive level roles. That's not at all what we're talking about here. But because they don't understand the amount of work and effort that we put in to just be able to speak in meetings, be able to contribute, be able to be taken seriously, we're doing double the work our men peers are doing. And that's what we are asking to change. The next controversial topic is the mom track, which I think you touched on a little bit while we're talking. And the mom track refers to that unspoken pathway where working mothers are sidelined into less demanding or lower visibility roles, often under the premise of accommodating the mom's needs. So have you ever, and again, you touched on that a little bit, have you ever felt like you were put on the mom track where you were given less ambitious roles because of your responsibilities as a parent? And how did you push past that?
That happened initially when I got back. So there was a short project that I was put on, and the feedback was, oh, you weren't speaking as much as we wanted you to. Again, I felt like, oh my God, I've become terrible at this. Then I was put on a project which was longer term, and that was almost like an internal project. So it wasn't a very high intensity type of project. Now, I personally took it in a good stride, meaning, sure, I'll get more time with child and I get the flexibility. But my inner voice, there was something in there, like maybe they put me on this because I couldn't do a client facing project, right? Nobody explicitly said anything, but I think, again, it goes back to that bias, which automatically, as people are getting into these staffing calls or thinking of the new roles they need to shift individuals into, it becomes a factor. It becomes that, okay, maybe she'll not be able to travel as much. Maybe she'll not be able to take up late calls. What if the client calls? What if they demand more, right? I feel like a better approach would be to set expectations with the client to say, no, we committed to 40 hours a week. So let's work 40 hours a week and not have these late evening calls, right? Don't just tie somebody down based on their personal situation. Use their brains the way you would of any other person, right? I think that's the shift that needs to potentially happen.
You mentioned something earlier that stuck in my head is give me the options. Like, would you rather a less visible, less demanding project because you're a mom, or this is being just pushed on you because of that premise? So just having a say in it is great. The next topic is gender bias, specifically in performance reviews. Mothers are frequently criticized for their availability or commitment to the company, which reinforces the idea that we were talking about, that mothers' priorities outside of work can negatively impact their performance. So, do you think that working moms face a higher standard during performance reviews? Have you experienced it personally, or you in evaluating other mom colleagues compared to their male peers?
There was a situation that happened. It wasn't so much just to evaluating their either commitment or time, but it was more around their shift in personality. And it was based on all the different reasons that we've talked about, and how you're coming back from maternity leave, you're still sort of settling in, questioning yourself on everything. And during this time, in one of the performance reviews, we were having a round table for one of my colleagues, and it was discussed that she doesn't seem confident enough, or she speaks so quietly. And this is where I brought up, like, she just got back from maternity and there are many changes that are probably happening and she's still trying to settle in. The thought came to me is, I was in a situation and I came up to this level to be able to speak for people who are in the lower ranks, and I'm able to speak to that because I'm at the table. But when I look around the table, it's just me. And what happened when my performance was discussed, and it just came to me like that. I was like, there's probably nobody to speak to that because they didn't even know. I felt like, no, we need to have more, obviously, our champions and women and people who have gone through this experience.
Okay, last topic is the gender pay gap controversy. I know the tech industries continues to face criticism for that gender pay gap, with mothers often being the most affected. Women in tech, particularly moms, frequently earn less than their male counterparts, even if they're in similar roles. So have you yourself ever experienced a pay disparity compared to your male counterparts? And if so, how did you approach negotiating for equal pay?
As I was growing at EY and what I was hearing from different colleagues, and just plain and simple, just like Glassdoor, right? Everybody knows what a typical pay range could be, etc. And realizing that maybe I'm not there yet, or maybe far behind, or could reach there. So one good thing is there are many opportunities that we get to actually talk to the leadership and bring these topics up and bring it to them. So typically performance raises are based on how you perform at different metrics levels, and utilization and sales and this and that. However, in one of the years, I did have this conversation. I said, I think I'm worth more and I bring more to the table than what I'm being compensated for, basically. When I asked, I did get it. I did get a higher number. Not to say that it aligns with all of the males, and I still feel that there's room for improvement. But I would say, to your point earlier, Reem, that you're making, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So when you do realize and ask for it, and I kind of did that, and I was in a better position from where I started, that gap exists, and we need to continue to ask and make sure that we're not being underestimated for the efforts that we bring.
Yep. And I'll say again, the burden isn't just on moms or women to ask. The burden is on organizations to make sure
to proactively do
pay equity. Exactly. Zeba, I'm so grateful for your insights today and for being part of this conversation that I think so many need to hear. And to every mom watching, remember, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can make it a little easier for the next generation of working moms.
I'm so glad you invited me over today, and I loved having the conversation and sharing my ideas. So thank you.